This next thing that we're talking about is my workflow. And this is going to be, I think this might be a little bit overkill for some people. But I do feel like sharing it because I think it's definitely unique to how I do stuff. So we always start with the song. Every band we try to get it so that every band comes through the studio with a demo. And what we can do is we can import that demo into a session and start to critique the song. And that's the very first step that I do with any band. So I'll go in, I'll make an empty session like this. And this goes back to the pre-production stuff that we were talking about yesterday. But I'll start with just the song. So let's see. Like here's the demo. Literally import that to the session. And then I usually play the demo and I'll figure out what tempo the song is. So I'll like just tap to it. So it looks like it's about 205, so I would go in, set my tempo to 205. And then try to get the song to line up with the click. I might be off a little bit on the tempo, but once you get it close, you can figure it out. Cool. So that's literally the first step, is opening the session, importing the demo, and going from there. A lot of times we get the demo and it doesn't have, or it'll be in the form of stems instead of just like one stereo track. Like, because I can't separate like drums and guitars from this, we'll actually request stems, and if they don't have any, then we'll try to make them so that what we want to have is a version of the song that we can kind of mold and tweak and change. You want to be able to go in and like cut guitar parts and copy and paste them around and, you know, shorten parts of songs and stuff like that. So I'll actually edit this file to carry out my ideas. And like I said, in the first day, one of the first steps I do is just play the song. And when I hear stuff in my head, I have this MIDI track here, and I'll literally just draw a blank MIDI event and then type into it. And I'll just type notes so I can remind myself what I'm hearing. Let's see. And then the great thing about this is, you know, after you've made like actual song changes, you just bounce it out and send it to the band. And so then you can kind of convey what you want to do. Now, in general, we have 3 sessions that we're working on at any given time. We're working on one session for vocals, one for guitars and bass, and one for drums. So the reason why we do this basically is because of processor power. It's really hard to be working on vocals in one session, but having the drum mix affect how much CPU power is available to your vocals. So we usually have, in the vocal session, we have the song that's printed, and it'll be the first track, just like we have it here on the Cubase. The song that's instrumental will just be at the top in one track, and then there'll just be a ton of vocal tracks for all the vocal production. Then on the guitar session, you'll just have one stem of drums, and then a bunch of bass tracks and guitar tracks. And then for the drum session, we'll have one stem of just guitars, and then all the tracks for the drums. And then I actually don't really engineer stuff. I kind of have engineers do it for me, and the reason why I do that is because I always want my ears to be fresh on the material. I don't want to have to hear the song 50 million times because then it'll affect my decisions. I would rather hear the song, I would rather have other people engineer it and hear the song many, many times, and they'll be kind of stale on it. And then I come in and hear the result of all that work, and I might say, that guitar part could be better, but they might have spent 4 hours on it. So if you're in the room and you're spending 4 hours on a part, you're going to be a little bit more reluctant to say, we should try that again, because you've already tried it again 100 times. But what's nice is that I can come in at the end and say, I don't know how many times you've done this, but it still sounds bad. So let's fix it. And sometimes that's the objective thing that we do. I also work with all three processes, so I'll keep up with what's going on with the vocalist. Okay, he's working on songs 2 and 4, but the bass is doing songs 3, and the guitar is going to do song 6. So I am consistently managing 3 different engineers at once, or sometimes we'll have 2 engineers that just trade off on doing certain things. And then at the end of each day, we will sync up everything that we've done. So if we've changed a part in this song, on the guitar session, we'll bounce that out and then put it back into the drum session or back into the vocal session. So every session gets updated and everything stays up to date. Do we have any questions about this so far?
No, one thing that we talked about earlier was, do you back up your files, right?
Yeah.
And you basically have a redundant backup if you're doing it that way. If you're working on the same project in 2 places, you have a backup. So.
Yeah, and the question is, should you back up that? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the thing that we haven't quite figured out yet. But if you think about it, there's 3 sessions for every song, so should you make 3 backups? Yeah. I mean, I guess the right answer is yes, but we're dealing with so many files that we can't really do that. But by doing it this way, like you mentioned, it automatically creates backups because you have to copy the project to so many different computers. So it's nice to have it like that. Yeah. Okay, so this kind of demonstrates what I'm talking about, this slide here. We have the demo, and then once we've put the demo into the project, we do our pre-production and our feedback changes directly in the project. We have our note tracks. I can also write notes to engineers specifically. I can tell the guitar engineer, like, hey, pay attention to the pitch on this chorus because it has a weird chord and I'm sure the guitar is going to give you trouble. I'll write that into an actual note track so that when he goes in to record the song, he opens up all the notes that I've written out and he can see, like, oh, I better pay attention to the guitar chords on this chorus. So then that splits into 3 different sessions, the vocals, guitars, and the drum session. And each session is going to have pretty much a final version of what's going to be there. So we've got the final version of what the guitars are going to do, but they just sound bad because they came from the band or they came from a demo or something like that. So it's just a matter of going over top of those parts and re-recording them. So we just re-record all the final versions. And a lot of times I tend to have the demo vocals in there as well, so we can figure out what kind of conflicting melodies or harmonies do we have when we are looking at the song, big picture. But the drummer, he doesn't care what the vocalist is doing. He just needs to worry about rhythm and patterns. So in his session, you might have the vocals muted, but they're still in there because I might walk in and say, hey, that drum fill you're playing is going to conflict with the vocal pattern, and let me show it to you. And I'll actually unmute the vocal and play it for him, and then he's like, oh, okay, I need to do this instead. So then we go into reiteration mode where you're just syncing all your changes. Every time you make a change, you sync it to all the other sessions. There's really no automatic way of doing it. We just pretty much do it manually. We'll just bounce out the audio and then trade the files. And then finally, all of it gets combined into a master session. So once we've finished everything and all the edits are done, then we do track archives of all the vocals, track archives of all the guitars, and then track archives of all the drums, and then import all of those into a master session. And then that's what gets mixed and mastered. So this is just a recap of the entire thing. I want to stress that the manual way of doing things tends to be the best. I don't like letting the computers do anything for me. I think that I hope that I've proved to you over the course of these last 2 days that being more hands-on and having more control over every individual element of the song contributes to a greater product. And doing these shortcut things like Beat Detective and all these other things that are designed to like save time, I feel like it's kind of a waste of time in the end, because then it ends up being more stuff for you to fix. Magical moments plus calculated decisions equal great results. I think we've seen that now. I think we've seen how we've come from the demo and journeyed all the way into this final version. I think you guys still remember like how blown away you were by hearing the difference for the first time. So it's a little bit less, like now that you've seen behind the curtains and you know how the magic trick works, it's not as mind-blowing. But I think that's part of all of this, is like knowing that when you work on a 5-minute song, it's actually going to take you like 50 hours or maybe even more to turn it into that 5 minutes that it ends up being. You just have to have patience, and you need to be prepared to pretty much sacrifice a ton of time if you want to do this on this scale. This is kind of the motto. The production is the sum of 1,000 tiny choices, but a great production is the sum of the right 1,000 choices. That just comes with experience. I think the more and more you work with bands and the more you work with songs and projects, the more you're going to learn. Like the very first song that I ever recorded in a computer didn't have a click track, and I didn't know what a click track was. And even the first album I recorded on a record label didn't have a click track either.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can start anywhere.
Yeah.
The devil's in the details. There are no shortcuts. That's a perfect point. I think if you are finding yourself doing shortcuts, maybe you should learn how to do it the more manual way, just because the more you know how to do something more manual, the more you can rely on yourself. If you walk into a studio and their Beat Detective doesn't work on their computer for some reason, then what are you going to do? You need to know how to actually do these things like with your bare hands, I guess, for lack of better words. Understand how songs work and how to make them better is what makes a great producer. The technical skills can be learned. You can open up a book and read about a compressor and understand how it works, but if you don't do the right things with the compressor, then it won't matter. So you are assumed to know how the tools of your craft work. You need to know, and I hope that I've showed you how some of these tools do work, and I know like when we went into detail about the guitar, now that you know a little bit more about how a guitar actually works, maybe you're going to be able to do more creative things with it. And finally, don't assume anything. Always ask the artist and make sure they're being heard. That's just communication skills. I think you should honestly just really spend a lot of your time communicating with your clients and making sure you're on the same page with what they want to accomplish with their music and their art, and making sure that every decision you make is getting closer to that accomplishment. So yeah, now I mean, you're no better than when you started with the course, but at least now you know what to do to get better.
Yeah. Awesome.
Questions? Yeah.
So the whole being able to make a song sound better to become a producer as opposed to somebody who can just turn knobs. What process or what did you do to eventually learn how to improve a song structurally and make the song basically at its best capacity?
Yeah, I think when I started, I probably didn't know how to do that. And if you listen to my earlier material, you'll probably hear a lot of stuff that's kind of funny in comparison to now. It's just a learning process. It's just the process of having someone literally hand you their song and then saying, you know, help us make the song better. And you learn tiny things. You know, you listen to music that is being successful and you take inspiration from what it's doing. You know, song structure, a lot of my song structure ideas just come from listening to great songs and thinking, okay, well, I noticed that in this song, they made the pre-chorus half as long the second time that it happened. I'm going to try that in this other song that I'm working with because it kind of seems boring there. And you just start to learn like these tiny little techniques over time, and you start to try them out, and you get a little bit more confident as you are given opportunities to try those out. And what I like to tell a lot of people who are starting out is go record your friends and just do weird crap with their songs, because they're your friends. They'll let you do that. And if you have kind of a guinea pig to mess around with, you'll end up finding that you can explore, you know, those kind of things and start to find your own identity as a producer and as a song arranger.
One other tiny question relating to this. Have you worked with any artists who are such good songwriters that you have actually come away from a session of working with them with better ideas about how to make songs better just from being with them?
Every day. I think I learned most of what I know just from working with other people. And you don't ever get the guy that comes through and teaches you everything. So you just learn little bits and pieces as you go along. Like somebody comes into the studio and they just know how to write really great guitar riffs. And you might walk away with a little tidbit on how to write guitar riffs better. Or you get somebody that writes really great like chorus melodies. And now you absorb some of that and you walk away with some more. So I think I am specifically the result of the last 10 years of all the artists I've worked with. I think that's molded me into the producer I am, because I didn't really like read a book about how to write chorus melodies. Instead, I worked with hundreds of bands, and what I know about chorus melodies just comes from their melodies that they wrote, or me helping them, you know, try to write better melodies. And also just listening to a lot of music. I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to music. I'll listen to any kind of music. I'm not going to say, oh, country sucks or anything like that. Like, you should actually listen to country and respect it for being a different kind of music and try to learn something from that and apply it to your favorite kind of music.
Awesome. We have some kind of wrap-up questions. Some are a little more specific than others, but sort of catch-all for the whole course. Do you want to go through some of those?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Study wants to know, can you explain the reason for not using accents for delays in verbs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I just like to think of audio in terms of just pretty much linear chains. I don't like having the all of the extra routing and having to worry about the send levels and all those kind of things. For me, it's just easier to wrap my brain around one signal path for every single track that I'm looking at. Like if I'm looking at a track, I don't want to know, okay, what other tracks does this route to? And if I put a distortion on here, is it going to be going through the delay or after or before? And it's just less confusing for me. And also, I don't think it really matters that much. That's why there's a mix knob on the plugin. So,
awesome. Casey wants to know, could you elaborate a little bit about your use of Max-Bass?
Oh, Max-Bass?
Yeah.
Well,
just talk about it.
Anyone who knows what Max-Bass is probably doesn't know what it does. Yeah. I think a lot of people just hear about it and then they try to use it or something. I would recommend that anyone who's interested in Max-Bass to just actually read the manual. Because the manual is written in a way that they tell you like why they made the plugin and what it's good for. And that's what I did. Like, I actually read the manual of every plugin that I use because I'm like really dorky like that. So there's a lot that you can learn from the manuals. I pretty much just use it on my. Sometimes I use it on my bass track. If you have a bass that's like tuned super low, you can put max bass on there, and it'll add in some lower frequencies, but it puts them in a higher register, which makes it like, so if you're listening to it on a laptop, you're still going to hear the bass notes. But if it wasn't, if it wasn't there, you wouldn't hear those low end notes because the low end of the laptop speakers drops off at a certain frequency. So it kind of duplicates the harmonics.
Awesome. Do you export and then do you do the mastering, or do you mix and master in the same project?
So anything that I export out of the project is mastered because the mastering chain is always on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you do it all in the same place.
Yep. And even if I do stems, my stems are all mastered as well.
Okay. Awesome. How do you prevent the kick and the low end of the bass from clashing? You showed a little bit of that.
I tried to show a little bit of that, and I think when I showed the tip earlier today where we started putting the kick drum in key, that's one way you can actually do it. But there's always going to be a moment in every song where the bass is playing one note, but the low end of the kick is doing something different.
Yeah.
So like really it's just a matter of carving out space in the low end. So you have to make a decision between, do you want the sub of your kick to be below or above your bass? And once you've made that decision, then you can do your EQ curves the way you need to. Like if the sub of your kick is going to be below your bass, then you're going to do a notch out on the sub frequencies of the bass track and leave them there for the kick. Or if the low end of your kick is going to be above the bass, then you would flip it. You would do the opposite. But yeah, like it's all about EQ and just using your ears to make the right EQ choices.
Yeah. Do you check your mixes in mono?
Yes,
You do?
absolutely.
Okay.
I do know that if someone is trying to ping me on the fact that my guitars kind of disappear in my mono mixes, I don't give a crap. Because nobody hears it in mono.
Okay.
But I do check it because you can make certain decisions.
Yeah.
Like when you put it in mono, you can hear how loud your bass is into comparison with your drums, and does the bass swallow your vocals? Those two things are nice to check.
Awesome. You said that producers have to always meet certain deadlines. Did you ever fear not finishing a project in time? And if so, what did you do? Has that happened?
Happens every project.
Yeah, you're down to the wire every project.
Yeah, I mean, you get a deadline, you try to stick with it, and you do the best you can.
Yeah.
I think my efficiency workflow that I tried to show, I think I could spend a lot more time talking about that if I was given the platform to do so. But basically, you have to come up with these ways of doing this professionally and efficiently. The label is trusting you like, hey, we need to put the album out this month, so that means you have to have it done by this day. So it's kind of up to you to figure out how to do that. And the ability to record any song at any time with any musician is the way that I've figured out how to do that. Because you might get a band that comes in, the vocalist is ready on day one. Well, if you don't work like I do, then what are you going to do? You don't have any of the songs recorded, so you can't record the vocalist. But if you do it the way that I do, then you at least have a demo that the vocalist would be able to sing over. Right. So you can take advantage of that opportunity where the vocalist has come in and said, I'm ready to go, let's go. Yeah. So boom, you take advantage of that, and later on he gets sick or something and you're like, man, I'm glad we recorded all those vocals before you got sick.
Totally. Yeah. Marcus wants to know, how did you get your mix so loud without destroying it, especially in the low end?
So the low end is very carefully crafted with the fact that we split that bass into 2 tracks.
Yep.
And having that low end track basically on a fader allows you to kind of, okay, you're mixing your song, you're going along and you're like, it sounds a little bass heavy. So now you have a fader dedicated to controlling how much bass there is in your mix. And it's just so simple to go back and just move that knob down a little notch. Now, if that was combined with the grit of your bass, then you would be turning the grit down too. And so now you're like, well, now I can't, the bass is undefined now, I can't hear it. But by doing it the other way, you can keep the definition of the bass playing, but also change the low end later. And by having the ability to do that, as you make certain mix decisions, you're going to see how it affects it, and then you can go in and adjust for that. The other thing that I have going on, at least in this mix, is a multi-band compressor is on the master bus, and I'm using that to kind of tame the low end a little bit more.
Awesome. Eddie wants to know, how do you create live backing tracks for bands after a studio recording?
Right, so I don't know if you guys remember looking at the session from earlier when I opened it up, but everything was grouped into folders. So there was a top folder that said drums, then we had the bass folder, the guitars. So literally the process of making stems is just soloing that folder and hitting export.
Wow.
So
do you put a click in at the beginning, or do you just give it to them and let them do that usually?
Yeah, typically I'll make a click track for them at the end. I'll bounce out all those stems, and then I'll just add an instrument track that has the click sound on it, and then I'll just bounce that out too. And then I let the band kind of decide, okay, how many counts do you want to have before your song? You can import these stems into your DAW and make that extra click count if you want.
Awesome.
So I don't really do that for them. I'll just make the stems and be like, okay, here's what we'd recorded.
Yeah.
You can use it however you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. On what criteria do you consider production to be better, musically rather than technically, or is it one client's ears, or what could be more experienced ones?
I think for me, what I like the most is when if I hear a song and I don't think about the snare or I don't think about the guitar sound, that's when I know it was done right. You walk away from that song going, man, that was a great song. So that's when you know the job is done. Now, as far as doing that for yourself, objectively, that's pretty difficult. You can only do the best job that you can. So you just try your hardest, try to improve the song as much as possible, and and then move on. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck in one place forever. I also, now that I have the technical ear that I do, I'm finding myself listening to a lot of music from the sound quality point of view. But I noticed that when I hear a really, really good song or a really, really great production, it just kind of, even for me and knowing how to do all this kind of stuff, it still will blow my mind. Like there are songs out there that I hear and I'm like, holy crap, how did they do that? So even I am still kind of a student to the craft. I think we all always are.
Awesome. Super rad. I think we're good on questions. There was one question that we had. Can you please go into detail about what you're listening for and trying to achieve when using a clipper?
So the clipper just basically allows you to, like the audio peaks go up in amplitude, and there's always a ceiling with digital audio. So with digital audio, you can only go up to 0. So you can only turn something up so loud before it starts to go over that point. What the clipper does is it allows you to keep turning it up and then chopping off the peak at the top. So as you're chopping off that peak, you're getting more volume and more saturation out of your track. I could actually demonstrate that really quick.
So essentially, you're just gaining control over whether or not it ends up clipping.
You are forcefully clipping it, and the algorithm that you're using allows that to sound less crappy. Because the digital clipping sounds like crap, but if you're using a clipper, it's been designed to sound good. Let me just bring in my drum tracks. I wonder if I could bring in like a snare. That'd be cool. Yeah, cool. So here's a snare track. Okay, so I can only turn the snare up so loud before it starts going over 0. Okay, so then if I put a clipper on there, I can actually keep turning it up and it'll still stay under 0. So that's a whole 24 decibels louder than I would have ever been able to do otherwise. So like starting at 0, this is right now the snare is as loud as you can turn it up just using volume. So now I just made it 12 decibels louder and it's still under 0. And then if you hit this switch, you can actually go to 24. And it still sounds like a snare drum. Like it's not completely demolished. So that's why we use the clipper, because you can just basically kill your headroom and get tons of volume out of it. And it works better on drums, and that's what it was designed to do, but you can do it on like synthesizers and stuff too.
Is this one of your plugins?
Yeah, this is a JST clip. So you just go to jstclip.com if you want it.
Cool. It's awesome. Any final thoughts? This has been 2 amazing days of content, Joey. It's
I want
been
people to
fantastic.
go make music and then show it to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I hope that you guys have learned some cool stuff from me. I tried to show you a little mixture of what I thought you wanted to learn about, and also what I wanted to show, I guess what I wanted to show the world about what I've learned from producing.
Yeah.
I kind of want people to not ever ask me to edit vocals if they're having me mix a song. So if you guys could please do that, that'd be awesome too.
Yeah.
Because mixing is not editing.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Joey, for being here.